really three general aspects to running a successful Seder. One is a halachic part of it, making sure you have, there are many halachas involved in the Seder. Evening, have a seat, grab a Haggadah. So there's a halachic aspect in halachas. I'll touch on some of that here and there, but that's not the main focus of this class. There are a lot of guides out there that deal with that, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. There are plenty of rabbis in town who can help you out. I'll touch on a couple of these halachas, but that's not the main purpose of this class. The other two aspects are the main thing. One is understanding the story and giving it over. Explaining that we have a story here. We want to have a tradition. You're trying to give over the tradition. It's not just simply the basic story, but certain details of how to say the story and how to interpret and understand it and pass it on. And also about creating an atmosphere. And creating an atmosphere also, it has a lot to do with who the people at your table are, what kind of people you have. So I'll try to talk about different ways. I don't know if anyone, so far no one here has small kids, so I'm not going to focus as much on small kids. You have grandkids coming? Okay, so I'll talk something about that then. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So the first step is that a lot of in most houses, anywhere I've seen, if you look on page 19 in the Haggadahs, I assume they're all the same. Those are Zmiros. There's one that's Zmiros on top of Haggadahs. Okay, there we go. No, just the top two. There we go. Okay, so if you look here on page 19, it has a list of 15 steps, and many houses actually the minhag gets to sing the 15 steps. So the first time I saw it, it's kind of funny. Why are we singing it? And then I realized there's actually a lot to it, because it's not just we're doing something else, doing something. There's actually it's a 15-step process of having a Haggadah. Each one of these steps has significance in the ultimate goal that we're trying to reach of giving over. The main goal is giving over the tradition of the story of what happened, how our nation became a nation, how we developed our connection with Hashem and the Torah, giving that over in such a way that, number one, the information is given over, but more importantly, that that experience, that is that the significance of it is given over, that the next generation appreciates, and even for ourselves, not just we'll see in the God, it's not just for the next generation, even for ourselves, reinforcing these ideas that we know already for ourselves. It says very clear in Haggadah, even if there's no one who doesn't know the story, but it's reinforcing for ourselves. Even the greatest rabbis still have to have a Haggadah Seder every year, and to reinforce for ourselves these ideas. So it's important to realize that there's a plan. There's 15 steps, and number 15 has a lot of significance. There are 15 actual steps going up to in the Beis HaMikdash. The 15 psalms that start Shir HaMalos, once Shir Lamalos. The 15, the Song of Ascents for the rising there. There's also 15 in Dayinu. There's 15. And you have 15 is an idea. It's a journey of 15 steps, and each one of these things leads us across. So basically, the main focus of the Seder is actually the mitzvah of matzah, which is divided up between matzah and tzafun, and then you have a couple of things in between. That is the main mitzvah, and that's the main action. And then the mitzvah of magid, which is the fifth step here, is the actual story of the Seder. So magid and matzah are the two main Torah mitzvahs of the night. Everything else is here to set up and enhance that, and to make it work properly. So it's some of the background, some of what I do. I've seen I had Seder at Rabbi Fisher's house, Rabbi Krems. I don't know if how many of you remember Rabbi Krems. I had by several Rebbeim in yeshiva, and something that was a very common thread in basically all of them is that the Seder has to be interactive. It's not a lecture. I like to, as many of my classes as I can, I like to be interactive. Please, by the way, feel free to ask questions, whatever, they're interactive. The Seder has to be interactive. You have to encourage everyone to get involved. Very often you have a lot of kids who come home from school and they have a lot of ideas they want to say that may or may not be part of your plan. It's sort of, you want to encourage that. You also, maybe I should have said it a little earlier, because of the 15 steps, you want to have one overarching message for your Seder. There's some points that are a must in that, and there's some, every year my Seder is a little different. I don't do the exact same message the same time every year. A few points that I feel are fundamental that I always emphasize, and in general, the idea is to make the story come alive. So you're going to have, very often you have guests, you have children, grandchildren, whatever, who want to say stories that are not exactly on the topic you want. You want to definitely encourage that, but you also want to focus on let the story speak for itself and bring out what's here. And so you don't want to spend too much time, especially and have the guests the next day at lunch. Say, like any neat ideas, let's save it for lunch tomorrow. I want to hear it at lunch tomorrow. Things that are more directly on the Seder, again, you have to encourage. You just certainly don't want to discourage anyone. If someone has a day excited to share something, you definitely don't want to kill that. But you want to let the stories come out. You want the aspects that are part of the story, part of the messaging here. That is what's most important. And in regards to this 15, yeah. So one of the things they do to encourage audience participation, I've seen many people do, is once you have karpas, you make a little hadama, have a little bite of that. There's no rule that says you can't eat other things too. Don't eat too much. You want to have more than about an ounce or so in the span of 5 minutes. But I have a bag. I have various different treats. You have nuts or candy, or chocolate, various treats, and I encourage anyone, whatever age, anyone who asks a good question or answers a question, they get a little something. There are nut questions and chocolate questions, and depending what it is, the idea is it's part. Larry Fisher did. Larry Fisher had also, he gave out. I think also many places have been. The idea is you have something. It's encouraged. You're part of this. You have that. The idea. This is yours. This is your Seder. Everyone there. You want to make it their Seder as well. I don't give them out. No. So nothing really. You're not supposed to eat a significant amount because you have to worry about do you make an after bracha, do you not? It's very complicated. So you're not supposed to eat a lot in a time span. But it's always good. Can you have milky chocolate? One of Rebbeim had milky chocolate. So some people say, no, you're about to have meat. You should have milky chocolate. One of Rebbeim gave out milky chocolate also because it's so long between now and when you actually eat. Then he felt that was fine too. Okay. Now there's a famous commentary called the Malbim, and this Haggadah that's attributed to the Malbim. It may not actually be written by the Malbim, and there's an introduction that's not always printed with that Haggadah of the Malbim. But the introduction of the Malbim goes through. Basically, he asks the question like, where does the Haggadah, where does this order come from? And what he says there. So whoever said it's a great idea. There's a verse that comes up many times in Haggadah. Let me point you to the first place it comes up. I believe is in the. Let's see. It comes up in the Four Sons. Yeah, it comes up at the page 20, bottom of page 28. This verse comes up more often than any other verse in Haggadah. It says Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li b'tziz mitzrayim. That's like, it skips a few words for that. The Gad de Levincha should tell your son Bayomahu on that day, Lamor saying, Ba'avur zeh, it's because of this. Asa Hashem li, Hashem did for me, b'tziz mitzrayim, when I went out of Egypt. And this verse comes again and again. And the way the Malbim, like I said, whoever wrote the Malbim Haggadah, but the way this introduction works, the way it says that that verse is the organization of the Haggadah. So it says, Higata, what does it mean to tell? Levincha, what's a son? Bayomahu, which day, when do you tell it? Lamor, how do you tell it? Ba'avur, it's because of this, what you tell it over, to the bottom of 28. Ba'avur zeh, because of this. And we'll talk about what that means. It means the mitzvahs, accepting the mitzvahs and taking on what Hashem commanded us. Asa Hashem li, Hashem did for me. That's the story actually of how Hashem took us out, but when we went out of Egypt. So that's where the actual story itself comes in. So all this, a lot of these things that seem random, each section of Haggadah that comes before the actual story itself, which the actual story itself starts on, and this Haggadah starts on page 32. So we have. I mean, this Haggadah doesn't have any commentaries. It goes quickly, but you're up to page 32 before the actual story starts. Everything else before that is fleshing out this idea of what exactly is the mitzvah. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is it so important? The main Haggadah actually starts on page 32. So if you can, you want to focus as much as possible on pages 32 through 44, I guess. 32 through 44 is that's the actual story. The actual story and conclusion of the story. That's the section there. And from Tzei Lamad, go learn what exactly happened. That's the story. But everything else is there to explain what exactly you're doing. Why are we doing this? Why now of all times? What's special with this day? So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we end up spending most of our time tonight on the other things. The story, in some ways, the story speaks for itself, but at the actual Seder, you really want to bring out let the story talk. Those pages 32 to 44 are the main focus of it. Now, so we're going back now to, like I said, we have all these different ideas. So it says, Vihiganta. So this is, I guess, let's go back before that. Let's go one step at a time. Kaddish. The Kaddish is Kiddush. Kiddush is the sanctification of the day. You make Kiddush every Shabbos. On Pesach, it's besides that it's Kiddush, you also drink the first cup of wine on it. The rabbis were deciding 4 cups of wine as commemoration of the 4 promises Hashem made to us when He took us out of Egypt. It's I will redeem you, I will take you. One is I'll take you. V'shati, I redeem you. V'shati, I'll save you. L'kachti, I'll take you to me. I skipped one. V'tzis, I'll take you out. L'kachti, and I'll take you to me. The Gra takes one of those out and adds in V'vesi, I'll bring you to Eretz Yisrael. So the Gra, everyone agrees it's 4, except there's one sefer that may have been read by the Maharal, maybe it could be forgery that says you could actually have 5 cups. Some people say you're allowed to have 5. Some say no, it's complete forgery and you should under no circumstances do that. If you want to have 5, ask a shayla about whether you can do that. But there are actually 5 languages there. It's a question which are the 4 that are 4 cups. The Gra, so most men say the first 4. The Gra adds in the 5th one, takes out one of the early ones. The Maharal is the only one who actually counts all 5, if the Maharal actually wrote that. Anyway, so it's a first cup, and the idea is we have 4 mitzvahs we do on these 4 cups. The first mitzvah is Kiddush, Kaddish. Second mitzvah is actually telling the story. You tell the story over the cup. That's why you fill up the cup before the story starts, and you only drink it at the end of the story. Third mitzvah is benching. You bench on the cup. And the fourth mitzvah is Hallel, the praising that comes at the very end. That's on the 4 cups. And you do those 4 cups, recline when you drink the 4 cups. It's a sign of freedom. The idea is that it's not, doing something over wine or grape juice, sort of adds a lot of significance to it, especially because I don't let my kids have 4 cups of grape juice on a regular night. I don't have 4 cups of grape juice and wine on a regular night. If you're using wine, that's much more wine than I normally drink. I use half wine, half grape juice. According to many opinions, as long as it's around 5-6%, that's called wine. If it gets like they sell 3% wine, there are definitely opinion says you can use it for sure. If you can't handle anything stronger than that, it's fine. My recommendation is try to use something that's at least 5-6%. But you can ask a shayla. This is not mainly the halacha part. That's a shayla how much you do, but the wine does add something. The fact that you feel a little bit, it does add a dimension. That's certainly a recommended dimension of the Seder. If someone can't do it, they certainly fulfill all the mitzvahs of Seder. But gladdens the heart. It's a joy. It's freedom. Like you want to feel that experience of freedom. You don't want to lose yourself. I wouldn't recommend if you're having a 2-hour Seder and you're going to drink 4 cups of 14% wine, but that could hit you pretty hard. If you have my Seder goes more like 5 hours from the first cup to last. If I'm using 6% wine, I feel buzzed some of the time, but not much more than that. But last 2 cups are close together. I usually feel a little bit by the end, but not so much. I do use big cups. I use like 5. There's different opinions, 3 ounce or 5 ounce. I use like 5.5 ounce cups. So if you're using only 3 ounce cup, then you might not feel anything. Even if you use 14%, you might not feel that much. Anyway, so the Kaddish first mitzvah, then comes Urchatz. Most people, everyone washes their hands. Some people, only one person washes their hands for that. The Gra says you make a bracha. Everyone else says you don't make a bracha here. But we're washing because the idea of you dip a vegetable in water. Now, I always ask my kids, whenever I do the God, I say, okay, just like every meal right after Kiddush, we're going to wash and we don't make a bracha, right? Like every Shabbos. My kids always say, wait a minute. Most of them remember from last year. They say, we usually make a, no, we don't make a bracha. In fact, at my house, only I wash. So just like every Shabbos, I'm going to wash after Kiddush. I say, why? No, we don't wash. But we always wash. Not tonight. Now, like every Shabbos, we're going to have some vegetable parsley dipped in salt water. The big advantage of parsley, by the way, is that no matter how much parsley you eat, it's not going to be kazayis. Not going to be an ounce of parsley. It takes a lot of parsley to eat an ounce. Because that 2nd, 3rd, 4th of parsley, great. You still haven't there's a lot of opinion says you shouldn't have more than an ounce. My parents always use parsley. The big advantage of parsley, kids love it. Parsley and salt water, delicious. Potatoes are fine. My mother-in-law uses asparagus. Some people talk about using fennel. Some people say fennel skitnios. But different, whatever you use, as long as potatoes are very common. I've seen cucumbers. Whatever you use. I've heard people using banana. It doesn't feel right to me, but I guess there's no it's hadama, so I guess technically you use banana also. Just somehow green onion, yeah, I guess you could. Anyway, so that and the whole reason why we do karpas is because it's weird. There's no, I mean, we do have some symbolism. The salt water represents tears. And once we're doing it, we do it in a way to have some symbolism. But the reason why we do karpas is because we never do this after. You never make karpas after Kiddush. It's something that's unusual, and it's just as the kids say, this is not normal. Every kid goes to school today. They learn about the stories I got in school, so they're not surprised anymore. They always wonder, like, why do we spend so long? I've spent, already 6 or 7 hours teaching my students Haggadah, and yet so they're not going to be surprised. But still, it's still weird. It still feels weird. Even in doing, you're excited, you know it's coming. It still feels strange. Idea is there's something going on. We can't eat yet. We can't eat yet. We can't eat. We have a story that we can't get to the meal. We're supposed to have a meal now. We can't eat until we've done this mitzvah. And you want to have that sense in them that we have a mission to do, and eventually there'll be real food. A little snack now. There'll eventually be real food. We have a mission. We have to do this. We have to explain this idea, before we do that. And then we have yachatz. We pull up a matzah. Now, one of my Rabbeim, he pulled the middle matzah and said, you see, this is a gorgeous matzah, and we can't use it. I say this too. We can't use, there's something wrong with this matzah. It's not acceptable for use tonight because it's too perfect. It's too good. Because when we were slaves in Egypt, we were poor. It says in the next line is halach. After we break, we say halach ma'aner. We're poor people. We were poor. A poor man saves something for later. He has gets some food. You don't eat it all now. You save some for later. So this matzah is whole. If we were back in Egypt, we wouldn't eat whole matzah. We didn't have the luxury of eating whole matzah. We had to save it for later. So we have to break this as a sign that we're poor. Now, in general, I'm not going to, and I would love to go, have time to go through the entire Haggadah and say, everything. I'm going to cut to the chase a little bit. One of the main contradictions in the Haggadah is the matzah the bread of poverty or the bread of freedom? We all know at the end of the Haggadah, it says, at the end of the story, it says that the matzah is because we didn't have time to let it rise and we ran out. By the way, some people say that I've heard people think that we were in a hurry to leave, so we quickly baked the matzah before we left. That's completely wrong. So I've heard people say that it's completely wrong. We're in such a hurry to leave that we ran out with the matzah, with the dough, and by the time we got out to Midbar, some people say we cooked it on our baked on our backs, or we set up our ovens when we got to the Midbar. But the time it took 600,000 men, about 2 million women and children, men, to leave the entire country and be out there and have the matzah cooked was under 18 minutes. That's the message at the end. That's why we have matzah at the end. That's what we say, is that the redemption of Hashem can happen. Hashem can change the entire like going from slaves in Egypt to free in the Midbar. It take less than 18 minutes. It's actually halacha, according to one opinion, that says a Kohen who can't drink it all today. Because we might have a Beis HaMikdash, and we might need him to work at the Beis HaMikdash, and we might be the only Kohen around, and he has to be sober. You can't work at the Beis HaMikdash if you're drunk. And it says, how long does it take to get sober if you have a cup of wine? It takes only 18 minutes. So halachically, there is an opinion. We don't pass it like that, but there's a halachic opinion in the Gemara that says you have to be worried that within the next 18 minutes we'll have a Beis HaMikdash. So it's not just as happened once. This is a practical concern, not concern, it's a sad, happy thing. But there's a practical consideration that it could happen again. When Mashiach comes, when we get redeemed, it could be in under 18 minutes. So that's the fundamental message of the matzah. But yet here at the beginning of the Seder, we're talking about the matzah as the poor man's bread. So this is one of the main things I discuss. And if I try to graduate, I'm trying to do it quick, so I'm going to say the whole idea now. But when I actually leave the Seder, I sort of try to build up step by step and see this line talks about this line, hints at something. I'm going to tell you the whole thing. It's actually the same matzah is the poverty and the freedom. That's one of the main messages of the matzah. The matzah that starts at the beginning is the bread of a poor man. At the end of the Seder is the bread of freedom, which because the experience of Egypt, the experience of being a slave in Egypt was fundamentally good for us. You see that, I can't point it every time that comes up. You see many times, if you read the text, you'll see Hashem kept us there as long as possible. It says, kept us the last possible moment to take us out. Well, we say thank you for keeping us in as long as possible. Yes, because we needed it. We needed to be there. Every second, had we stayed for, we were only there 210 years. Supposed to be there 400 years. We couldn't handle it. Hashem did the calculation 400 differently, so we're only there for 210. But the idea was, we needed it. The longer we were there, if we'd managed to be there for 400 years without being corrupted, we would never have had all the other exiles today. We couldn't handle that much at once, so Hashem took us out early, did a different calculation, but we needed every second possible, took away, maybe 100 years. Every second could have been decades or whatever from our current exile. We don't know. But so Hashem kept us there. That poverty was necessary. Hashem took us, we went down, we ran away from Lavan. Later it says, Lavan tried to kill us, we ran away to Egypt. What does it mean? What does that have to do with each other? Because had we not left, we would still be around Lavan, we would still be in that environment. We had to go away, separate from the rest of our family, become independent from Lavan and his whole troop, and become ourselves, become our own nation. We need the experience of being slaves in Egypt. The Torah calls it an iron crucible. We were smelted in Egypt. That made us into who we are. We needed that experience. And so the very same matzah that represents the suffering and pain in Egypt is also the matzah at the end of the same time, but the freedom, a sign that Hashem can change our whole everything in 18 minutes and redeem us. Similarly, the more the bitterness, we have the hill sandwich. We take the bitter morer, put in the matzah freedom with the current Pesach is for sure freedom. The matzah is freedom and slavery. The Pesach is for sure freedom. And the morer is bitterness. And now we put all together, the morer makes everything taste better. You have a shawarma. So it's basically, the current Pesach, the hill sandwich is basically shawarma. The Sephardi bread, they actually is fluffy. So you have a latha, take the shawarma, that's a roast lamb, that's shawarma, and take a little bit of lettuce on it. Lettuce, if the lettuce is, even if you use horseradish, a little bit of bitterness, but when you add it to the shawarma and the bread, that bitterness makes the whole thing taste better. That's why Hillel says to put it all together. It's all one thing. The suffering led to the freedom. That is, in my mind, that is the fundamental message of Haggadah, that we needed that. This experience made us who we are. It wasn't just a coincidence. We were saying, Hashem saved us. Thank you, Hashem. We got us out of it. No. This experience of being slaves, coming out, making us who we are, creating us as a nation, that led fundamentally to us accepting the Torah. We get to a couple places that Hashem gave us the Torah. That's also, it sneaks in here and there throughout the Haggadah. So at least 2 or 3 references, for sure 2 references to the Torah in the Haggadah. Right. The Harosis is the mortar. Harosis is the mortar. Harosis is the mortar. Yeah, I know. More is the bitterness of slavery. Harosis is the mortar. But we take the mortar and dip it in the harosis. Yeah. But the harosis is the bitterness. Okay. So anyway, so you have the matzah. He's talking about how it can't use it. It's lechem oni. It's bread of poverty. It's not usable, and so you have to break it to make it appropriate. And so that's why after we break, now we say this is the bread we ate. Now this is what it was, and then we say kol dichvin yesevicha. Why say we invite everyone? It's a little late to invite them to the Seder. In the middle of the Seder, invite everyone to the Seder. What we're saying is it's a fundamental aspect of what we're doing tonight that anyone who needs a place is welcome. By the way, I guess you all have places, but if anyone needs a place, they're welcome. I think everyone has a place already. But if you know anyone needs a place, the idea is that fundamental to our giving a Seder is that anyone who needs a Seder can join with us. This is not just about me. This is bigger than me. We're saying this declaration. Whoever wants to be part of it, every Jew, with my consent that every single Jew has this experience. And you're telling whoever's at your table, and anyone that doesn't have, we would have invited them. We know that. We invite them in. That's fundamental. This is a national level experience, so we have to invite everyone in. We have to say, everyone's part of this. This is for everyone. And then now there's a minhag I started doing, and my kids, I've heard from other people also. This is for many people is the highlight of the Seder. That when we left Egypt, we had all sorts of donkeys and things, and we stored everything on the donkeys. What do we carry ourselves? The matzah. They had left our matzah from the Seder. We carried that matzah on our shoulders. And so I actually, I walk around the table, so home march around the table. I put the matzah on my shoulder. I walk around. I sing a marching song. Make up whatever marching song you want. But I march around. The kids follow me around. And like 6 months later, I'm going to get telling me, remember when it was Pesach and you put matzah on your shoulder? That sticks with them so much. When you do something, it's not just the story. You get up, you walk around, that memory, that action that you're doing, that sticks with them. And you want to try it. By the end of the Seder, we say, Hashem did it for me. That's another major theme, is that it's not just our ancestors. It's not just something a story that happened in the past. Again, I wish I had time to point out all these themes as they come up everywhere in the Haggadah. You'll see, if you read through the Haggadah, you'll see many places. Starts out, we say our ancestors, and then it sort of creeps in me. And by the end, we say, it was because of what Hashem did for me. And this verse said, you tell your son what Hashem did for me when he took me out of Egypt. Right? The idea is we're putting emphasis on ourselves. We're imprinting on ourselves also. Beginning of the Seder, we say, yeah, it did for our ancestors. At the end of the Seder, we're up to being on a level that we can say, Hashem took me out of Egypt. Hashem did this for me when he took me out of Egypt. I was there. This is relevant to me. This is my life. This is my new reality, is that I'm free because of this. And everything I know about my whole life today is all because of this day. I was part of this. I've heard people say this. Everyone has their own personal Egypt. I don't. No, that does not work for me. We went out of the actual Egypt. We weren't there, but we have everything about who we are today is because of this Exodus. That's important to us. Not just the fact that we're free, but the fact of the Exodus. Like you mentioned earlier, the slave was good for us. We were part of that Exodus. That made an imprint on us. And if Maneshtana, it's basically the idea of the kids. The basic idea is we know this night's special. We're doing all these funny things. What's going? Why is this night so different? What's going on? Why do we have to all do these things? We have a quick answer here. Avadim, we were slaves, and Hashem took us out. If He hadn't taken us out, we would still be there. It's on page 26. And it says, and even if we were all wise, we all knew everything. Again, we all have to be part of this. I mean, it's for everybody, every single person, whoever's there. It's not for the kids only. It's for every single person. We have to react. We have to re-imprint upon ourselves how fundamental this is to our very nature. We have these stories about when they said it all night long. It's talking about, again, it's not, the Seder, the mitzvah, by the way, the mitzvah is to not go to sleep after the Seder. You're supposed to stay up learning about Pesach until sleep grabs you. Very often sleep grabs me about 5 minutes after I finish the Seder. But I never go to bed until I fall asleep on the couch. I grab a book, I start reading something about leaving Egypt, and usually I fall asleep three, and I wake up, learn another paragraph, fall asleep, wake up, learn another paragraph, and then I go to bed. But that's actual halacha. That's what you're supposed to do. If my Seder finishes at 2:30, I'm pretty tired. But I try my best. Both nights, yeah. 2:30. Some years even later. When I was single, I used to actually, and even first year I was married, I stayed up all night. They used to, as they say, they had a shachar. He said, at sunrise, stayed up. I actually was able to stay up and daven at sunrise. We don't have that here. I don't think I can make it anymore. What? What? Shir Shirim after the Seder also. Yeah, I make it. Hopefully I stay awake for Shir Shirim. Try to learn. The idea is it doesn't end. That's one of the messages here. It doesn't end. This obligation. Every year we mention leaving Egypt. Every night, every night, every shachris, every morning, every night, we mention leaving Egypt. But one night a year we have to experience it. And just because we finish the Seder, it doesn't stop. It goes until we can't anymore. And then that's why it says at the end, by the way, what does they say? What is the message they say in the morning? Rabbi, it's time to say Shema. It's time to mention leaving Egypt again. You're done with this experience. Let's go talk about it again. Right away, okay, jump back in. You see us with Ryan, third paragraph, Shema. They don't say it's time to daven shachris. They say it's time to say Shema. You have to start again. The mentioning, not the experiencing, the mentioning. And that's what Elazar ben Azariah says. That's why, day and night, or even Mashiach, how important this idea is. Then we say, of the four sons, 4 different ways of relating to this story. The idea here is that the Torah is telling us that there are 4 different ways a person can relate to this story. Someone can say, this is my story, I want to know more. Someone can come and say, this is not relevant to me, this is a waste of my time. We have to be able to approach that. Someone who says, hey, this is weird. There's something different tonight. This is not normal night. Why are we doing all these weird things? Probably most of us are the Tom. And then the individual doesn't even notice, someone who doesn't even realize that there's something special going on. And that's the idea. You have to imprint upon them, hey, there's something going on. So hopefully we're the Chacham. It's very rare to find someone who's actually, coming to a Seder as a Rasha, but sometimes you have that. And, Chacham and Tam just says, hey, there's things that are different. What's different? It's different. What's the point of being different tonight? And that's the idea here. Understanding there's 4 basic approaches. The God has to be able to handle all those approaches. The last overarching theme comes up in this. Here's Yachol Mirosh Chodesh. I've sort of mentioned already, but here's where it really comes out. Page 30. It says, you might think to say in Rosh Chodesh. Why? Nisan is a month of redemption. So you could say it already. You have a Seder this week. It says the B'yom on that day. It has to be the day that we went out. From that word, it could be still daylight. You're reading the Karban Pesach in the day. To start your Pesach Seder early, start before sundown. What is it at night? It says, Bavor Zeh, because of this. What's the this? Because of this, generally whenever you see Zeh, it means pointing. And when we left Egypt, we say, Zekili is my God. They say they had such an experience of Hashem's presence, they could figuratively point at God. I don't even know what that means. It's something I can't even fathom the idea. God doesn't have a body. There's nothing to point at. Yet they could point at God, say, this is God. Here also, Bavur Zeh, what are you pointing at? You're pointing at the matzah, the Pesach, the Karban Pesach. You're pointing at the mitzvahs. Hashem took us out for us to do the mitzvahs. And that's why we have to actually eat the matzah. That's why eating the matzah is so fundamental. The point of taking us out was not just to free us. The point of out was that point of taking us out was to turn us from being Paro slaves to being Hashem's slaves, Hashem's people. That it wasn't just a total redemption. We're free, go do what you want. No, Hashem took us out so that we do the mitzvahs. One of my favorite seders ever. My daughter, she's now 10. I think she was 3 at the time. She spent the entire seder just, it was because of this that Hashem took me out of Egypt. Just randomly burst out. It was great. Randomly burst out like 5-6 times a seder. It's because of this that Hashem took me out. I make a big what? At 3, yeah. So okay, I got the mitzvah. I got the message. That is the message. Hashem took me out of Egypt, so I will do this. So I would make the seder. Hashem said, "I'm taking you out, so you're going to make a seder. You're going to eat the mat. You're going to do this." In a sense, every mitzvah we do is basically just concretizing that we are Hashem's people. Hashem doesn't need our mitzvahs. Now, what they do on a spiritual level, somehow our mitzvahs accomplish something. I'm not saying the mitzvahs are a waste. I don't want to accuse me of saying mitzvahs are a waste of time. But fundamentally, why do we do mitzvahs? Because Hashem said so. And Hashem has reasons why He said so. He just didn't pick random mitzvahs. But if Hashem had picked random mitzvahs, we'd do them anyway because Hashem said so. That's it. We're doing it merely because Hashem told us to. That's fundamentally why we do mitzvahs. Again, they accomplish all sorts of things in spiritual levels and physical levels. They bring great, keeping mitzvahs. There's documentation, many mitzvahs, certainly, a healthier lifestyle. There's so many studies. I don't know how many scientific, but I've seen many, at least anecdotal studies that they have real, strong evidence that keeping mitzvahs actually brings health and happiness. There's a New York Times article, the happiest demographics, and Orthodox Jew is the happiest religion in America, for example. This was actually Rosh Chodesh Adar in, I believe, 2012. I think it was my last year in Israel. I believe it was 2012 Rosh Chodesh Adar. I don't know what that day was. New York Times Gallup poll came out that Orthodox Jews are the happiest people in America, happiest religion. So keeping mitzvahs certainly in this world has spiritual, accomplishes all sorts of spiritual benefits as well. That's all true, but fundamentally we're doing it because Hashem said so, and that's it. Hashem took us out so that we would do this. So we'll make a seder, and that's why I tell the Rasha, you think this is a waste of time. You don't deserve to be free because you were saved, so you'll do a seder. You think it's a waste of time to be at a seder, so you don't deserve to be free. Now He is here. He's at the seder. So in a sense, we're saying, but you can't. You don't think you should be here, but at least you're here. So He is here, but He's not appreciating what's important. Get to Vihish, and then we say this. I mentioned earlier. In the second paragraph there on 30, it says that we used to be idol worshippers. Hashem brought Avram, took us out, helped us, bring him to us. This is again bringing this story. That Hashem had this promise that we're going to go down to Egypt and be slaves. Esav didn't want any part of that. We mentioned Esav here. Esav didn't want it. Esav went to Har Seir, and we went down to Mitzrayim. That's a direct relationship. Hashem told Avram, some of your descendants are going to be slaves and they're going to get Eretz Yisrael. Esav said, I don't want Eretz Yisrael. I don't want to stay in Egypt. I'm willing to give up Eretz Yisrael to get that, to avoid being a slave. He went to Har Seir. He's out of the picture. He's not part of her family anymore. In order to be part of the family, you have to be experiencing going down to Mitzrayim. That's a fundamental prerequisite to being part of it. Yishmael was not there. They're not Jews. Esav was not there. It had to be only people who were in the Mitzrayim experience are part of Jews. Converts, we say that the Neshamas were there also. So anyone, if you weren't Jewish, but you're there too. So anyway, it's not excluding converts. Even some of them, Esav, whatever, they were there. But if excluding people who are not Jewish, even though they're descended from Avram, they're not part of this. They lost out. And Hashem kept His promise. He told Avram that we just quoted that we're going down to Egypt. That's why it's right in the next paragraph, right? And the punishment will come out with great wealth, and this is what stood for us. Anyone need to daven still? Okay. So this is one of the few places I forgot to mention that one of the other explanation of Lachma Anya, it says in the Torah, Lechem Oni, so we translate earlier as bread of poverty. It's also the bread that you answer over. So you're supposed to have the matzahs uncovered, the entire Seder, except whenever you lift up your cup. So anytime you lift the cup, you cover the matzahs. Anytime that you're not lifting the cup, you want the matzahs open. You're saying the story. The story is a story of matzah. So we're saying a story over the matzah. So certain highlights we say over a cup, but anyway, because the matzah really is more important than the wine. So you cover the matzah, so matzah shouldn't see you holding the cup. So whenever you say something, same thing for Kiddush, yeah. Right. Right. So the matzahs get covered, and most of God has mentioned it. So 30 it says the matzahs are covered, and then you can lift the cups, And we're saying, basic idea here is we needed that experience to go to being in Egypt to make us who we are. We forget about it. Every so often, we forget who we are. We forget that we're Hashem's people. We forget what we've come through, what we're going. And therefore, Hashem reminds us. Hashem makes life difficult for us. Hashem sends us tragedies. And we have no choice but to turn back to Hashem and embrace that, that we are Hashem's people. We're forced into that, so many cases, you see assimilation is rampant. All of a sudden that's when they say, no, you're too Jewish for us. When people are Orthodox, they're able to blend in. When people start, stop, forgetting the Torah, that's when people like Hitler, before Hitler, when people were, 100 years before Hitler, Jews were accepted fully in society. And Hitler, they were completely secular. That's when Hitler said, no, if one grandparent is Jewish, the more you try to fit in and not give up that, forget who we are, the more Hashem sends someone to force you back into it. You see, historically, when there are tragedies, they always spark a return movement. And, even after we lost prophecy, for sure in Tanakh, but even after that, whenever there are tragedies, Hashem's way of poking us and saying, go back, return. And that's what God's saying. This is what stood for us. This is what kept us going. And every generation, someone arises to try to destroy us, and Hashem saves us from them. That's what keeps us going. And now we're up to the actual story. Again, from 32 to 44, that's the story. Again, I don't have time. I'd love to, I could give, spend the whole time on this. It largely speaks for itself. If we bring out the themes that we mentioned, these themes come out many times here. And that we went down as a small family, we turned to the great nation, they afflicted us, we cried out, we were forced to dive into Hashem, and then Hashem saved us. And talked again many times about how details about the work, details about how we had to pray, details about what we turned into, what we turned into. Like I said, this is the main part of the Haggadah. I highly recommend reading through it a couple times, seeing all these themes I've discussed, seeing how they come out in this story. I want to get to the end, and this is I don't have time to go through all of that now, but just this idea that it's about the relationship between us and Hashem, about the suffering, about the redemption. It's that this is the actual story. The Makos, each one of the Makos shows us a different aspect of how Hashem is supreme over the laws of nature. The staff was one of the creations that was made on the Pirkei Avos. It says the staff was made right before Shabbos, first Shabbos. The message I take from that is that Hashem created the laws of physics. And as a general rule, Hashem's will is that the laws of physics should apply. Hashem can proactively nullify them, but as a general rule, Hashem lets the laws of physics work. But built into the laws of physics are certain exceptions to the laws of physics, and Moshe Rabbeinu's staff was one of those exceptions to the laws of physics. The staff had in it part of the law of physics says this staff can perform certain miracles. Now we don't have the staff. There's no way to scientifically test it. I don't know how, if a random person can just use the staff. I don't know. I don't know how you can use it. I don't know. But in certain circumstances, the laws of physics say this staff can perform miracles. That's why Rabbi Yehuda says that it was actually written on the staff. A few references to that. The acronym of the Makos, the Tzach Hadash B'Chav, was written on the staff because the world was created with part of the world being that these Makos are going to happen. It's a message, a once and for all message that Hashem has supreme over the laws of physics. The laws of physics are there because Hashem wants them to be there. When Hashem wants to contradict the laws of physics, he can. Famous story, there's one of the great Baalei Musar of Yisrael Salanter, was once visiting at an inn, and one of the innkeepers who was Jewish, didn't keep mitzvahs, and said, why, if Hashem wants me to keep it, just show me miracles, show me, reveal himself to me. Just then his daughter got home and she wants some kind of reward for being a virtuoso or some kind of performer. And she had, came to the reward, and he says, why don't you perform for me? He said, I have a letter from the world's greatest experts, and I'm a virtuoso. I don't need to perform for every person. I don't need to prove it again. I just proved it in front of the world's experts. So that's the idea here. Hashem proved it once. We have it in writing, we have documentation. Hashem doesn't need to prove it in every generation. That's why we say Hashem did these miracles, the Makos, eventually Matan Torah. That legacy, that the appreciation we have for that, and how that shows that the laws of physics are subordinate to Hashem's will. That message can last us, even though we don't see anything against the laws of physics on a regular, probably ever. But Hashem could. The laws of physics are there because Hashem wants them to be there. We know that. Hashem wants, I could drop my phone, it's going to fly up to the ceiling, or it can turn into a bird and fly away. It can happen. It probably won't. I'd make any bets it's going to happen. But idea is Makos teach us that the laws of physics are there because Hashem wants them to be there, and when He doesn't want them, they don't have to be there. We go into how many Makos there were. We go into the Dayenu. That's on page 40. Now, Dayenu is basically saying there are, again, 15 steps of redemption. 15 things Hashem did for us to take us out of being slaves in Egypt all the way to being free in Eretz Yisrael. And each one of these 15 steps is significant in its own right. That's a Dayenu. Hashem had taken us out of Egypt and had not punished Egyptians. That would have been enough. That would be enough to say thank you, to appreciate Hashem to took us out. Each one of these steps is significant in its own right. Each one of us shows a different high level of supremacy, teaching us about Hashem's relationship with the world, or how to make this different level of freedom, different level of closeness to Hashem. Each one in its own right has a certain significance. The hardest one to explain, by the way, is if He had brought us to Mount Sinai and hadn't told us the Torah. It's very easy to ask. What's the point of going to Mount Sinai without the Torah? The point of going to Mount Sinai is to get the Torah. So why do you have to take us to Mount Sinai without the Torah? So the answer was that I've heard many sources say this, that the revelation of God's presence on Har Sinai was actually more important than the Torah. Going back a little bit, the time of Adam, going back quite a ways, Adam had no doubts. Adam had no doubts about his faith. He knew that a God made him. When he did the sin of eating from the tree, from that point, this zuhama, this I don't know, a good translation, disgustingness doesn't quite do it justice. This negativity entered him, and that was doubt. So we had this doubt, doubts in faith came to us. At Har Sinai, we lost that doubt, and we got a piece of it back by the sin of the golden calf, but not entirely. But the idea of at Mount Sinai, the seeing Hashem reveal Himself there, restored us to that level, at least almost the level of Adam before the sin, that we had the direct understanding, the experiential understanding that Hashem is real. And then we did the golden calf that reversed some of that. But that is His idea. It brought us to Mount Sinai. Even without the Torah, that would have been enough. And then to give us the Torah is a way of sort of preserving that experience, keeping it going. Besides, like I said, actually doing it, but having the Torah itself is what keeps that going. Our famous Rabbi called the Torah a thermos for the experience of Mount Sinai. The Torah is a thermos to keep the warmth of Mount Sinai with us. He'd never heard of a thermos before. He saw a thermos and said, "Wow, now I can, thermos, that's what Torah is. Torah is a thermos." So he did whole speech written in Yiddish. Speech written in Yiddish with the word thermos in it. Tayudema is that thermos? Do you know what a thermos is? Great speech. I don't speak Yiddish, but at least I heard part of it translated. And then, so they get to end of Elenu, we say, and so much more. So he did all these 15 things, all these different steps of redeeming us, making us His nation. So much more, so we have to say thank you. And we're almost at the point of saying thank you. And he has to stop and say, wait, Rabbi Gimel says we have to do something first. Before we can actually say thank you, before we can actually appreciate and say thanks and go on and eat, we have to say these themes, Pesach, Malchus, and more. We already talked about what they represent. We have to actually speak that out, even though that's been the whole point of the Seder the whole along. But yet we have to speak it out. We have to be careful not to lift up. You have a shank bone. You don't point, lift up. You don't do anything. The shank bone represents the sacrifice of Pesach, but is not. So don't point to it. Don't do anything with it. So there, you don't make any reference to the shank bone. We say the Pesach that we used to eat because then Hashem jumped over the houses. He saw the blood, jumped over the houses, and saved us. So we don't point to anything there. Matzah, you either point to matzah, lift up the matzah more. You either point to the more or lift up the more. I lift it up. So that you do, but for Pesach you don't point to anything. It's there as a symbol of the Pesach, but it's not the Pesach. You don't point to it. But these things, like I mentioned before, Pesach is the freedom, Matzah is the freedom and the slavery, and More is the slavery. I have to understand. You have to see that's there. That's the mitzvah that we mentioned before. That's why it's there. It's up to B'chol Dor V'Dor, page 44. Now, in every generation, we have to. This is where we say we have to look at ourselves. This is the point. By this point, hopefully, we've gotten to the level that we can say, this is me. That's what we're building up. This is, in a sense, a climax of the story where we say, Hashem did it for me, took me out of Egypt. You have to look at yourself and see yourself as having left Egypt. If you're Sephardi, by the way, anyone Sephardi here? Yes, yeah. Okay, so the Rambam says the Har that if you show yourself, put on a show as if you were. But Ashkenazim say liros, you have to see yourself. So you see, it says not just the answers, but each one of us. It says He took us out of Egypt, and therefore we're saying thank you as free people. It's actually significance because on the 7th day of Pesach, we don't say a full Hallel because the Egyptians drowned in the sea. You can't say Hallel when you can't rejoice when other people are suffering. But at the time when we left Egypt, they did sing a song then. So why is that? Because when you're personally saved from it, when you experience something, then you can rejoice over the downfall of the enemies. When you are saved, you're the direct benefactor, then you can say the song. When it happened to someone else, then the angels wanted to sing. Then Hashem told the angels, you can't sing. People are dying, you can't sing. But when Israel were saved, they were allowed to sing. So by the time we get to the point and say, we did this for us, now we can say Hallel. We can't say Hallel over the suffering of the Egyptians until we get to the point that we say, we were saved. This is directly about us. We are the direct beneficiaries of this. Therefore, we can rejoice even though there's a tangential suffering of the Egyptians. But now we can say Hallel. We can praise Hashem. We start the Hallel here. We say the first 2 paragraphs. Then we make a bracha on the story. And we say the rest of Hallel after the meal, partly because you're going to say a much better Hallel after you have a full stomach. You have to say some thank you right away. We got to this realization, this recognition of what happened. We have to say thank you right away. Then you do the mitzvahs, and then you have a nice full meal. You finish off the afikomen, and then you have the bench, and then you have the remainder of the Hallel, which is the praising Hashem and saying thank you so much for everything you did. A lot of references there through a Hallel. It's a regular Hallel plus a couple of paragraphs at the end. Nishmas. There's a Hallel Gadol, which is a 26 Hodul Hashem Kitovs. So that added on plus the Nishmas. So that it's a longer Hallel. The idea of we've gotten to recognition, we have a full stomach, we're satisfied, we had the afikomen. Afikomen is supposed to be eaten on a somewhat full stomach. You have to save room for it. It's not, if you're stuffed and you don't enjoy eating at that point, then you don't get the mitzvah of afikomen. There's a little room, but you're supposed to be satiated already when you eat it. Because we're above and beyond, we're free. We're free and we're able to enjoy ourselves, eat even past the level of satiation, eat more than we need, because Hashem took us out. We have this freedom. We're not slaves. We're Hashem's people. Hashem has bestowed on us all the goodness, and we are able to benefit that way. And then there's a bunch of songs after the Nirtza, at the very end of Nirtza, which is the appeasement saying, Hashem, we were able to discuss the mitzvahs. Next year, let's actually bring a Korban Pesach. That's the real, that's the Seder would be so much better if we actually had a Korban Pesach. That's on page 78, I think, 76, on to 78, right? That's when we say, Hashem, we discussed it, we did everything, but please give us a chance to bring it back next year in Yerushalayim. We'll actually be able to do it. And then there's a bunch of songs, piyutim, that are also, each one has a message. Yachad Gadya, by the way, the message, my favorite, the message is that someone says, I worship a goat. Goat is my God. Yeah, but a cat can eat a goat. Okay, so I'm finding the cat as my God. Well, but a dog can bite a cat. So I worship a dog, stick, but in the bottom line, it all comes back to Hashem. Right? Anything, it's about the cycle and realizing.
It's a song of ascendance.
What?
It's a song of ascendance.
Ascendance, yeah. Keeping up higher and saying, hey, Hashem, buck stops here with Hashem. That's the final word is, and Hashem at the end of the day, when Hashem is there, that's he's in charge of everything. The full recognition that Hashem runs the world and everything we do is for Hashem, because Hashem and our relationship with Hashem came to the Haggadah, and that is the shortened version of my Seder. And hopefully you can read for yourself and try to add on more. And hopefully, as God willing, you all run very powerful Sedarim and have a great Pesach. And next year, this year maybe it's still not too late for this year. This year in Yerushalayim, next year in Yerushalayim, do it well, and we'll get there. That's Hashem.
I was reading,
yes.
I started reading a book last week about davening, and one of the first things that, in the introduction, he brought this idea of speech being in prayer, being inherently connected to the redemption, to the Exodus. There were several examples, but I don't remember them right off the bat.
Yeah, because we had to ask. We said we asked for it. We had to daven. Hashem made it so difficult we had to daven for it. And so Hashem redeems us when we ask Him to. It's actually, I heard an idea once. Hashem got upset at Moshe for saying, I can't talk. And Hashem says, what do you mean? Hashem says, who made you not able to talk? I made you. What's it saying? Hashem is upset saying, you could have asked me to fix your speech. You're saying, I can't do it, I can't talk. Just say, Hashem, I can't talk. Can you help me talk? I can't do the job unless you let me talk. Give me the vessels to do my job, and I can do a job. You tell your boss, you want me to do all this stuff. My computer is running on Windows 9, Windows 2.0, 3.1.1, whatever. I need a better computer. I can't do the job without it. Your boss will give you a better computer. What? That's new. That's a new one. 3.3.
Windows 95?
Yeah, I grew up on 3.1.1. Windows 3.1.1. DOS. I had DOS too. I learned the word processor on DOS. My father has a PhD in programming, so I grew up. I was using computers from pretty young, but I started on DOS. Right. So I have a 10K baud modem. I can't send you my report. Give me an upgrade here. So that's the idea of davening is, yeah, Hashem sends us what we ask for. You don't ask for it, you don't get it. So yeah, it is fundamental to redemption is that you have to ask for it. Could be after all Hashem is waiting, just for everyone in the world to say, we need this. Every Jew would say, Hashem, we need this. Could be all that we need. There's so much in that statement. The fact that we're saying Hashem, we need this means like we understand everything. Right? That statement says we understand everything. So that's really all we need right now. I don't know. Try it. Okay, thank you for coming.